What's up, everyone, and welcome to Brian Sports Hub. If you're new here, my name is Brian. I am the host of this podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the NFL, the NBA, and the MLB. It's a lot of fun topics, a lot of interesting breaking news that has been coming out in recent days, and I'm very excited to be discussing all of it right here on the newest episode of Brian Sports Hub. The NFL head coaching carousel has heated up over the last few days as 5 new teams have found their head coach for the 2025 season. The first team I wanted to talk about was the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, who had fired or let go of Antonio Pierce, their former head coach, decided to hire Pete Carroll. And for those of you that may be familiar with the NFL, Pete Carroll was the former Seahawks head coach, the former Super Bowl winning head coach. And last year he was moved up to a executive position in the front office as a form of almost like a retirement, essentially. It was basically a nice way to fire him from the head coach duties so the Seahawks could then hire Mike McDonald. But nonetheless, Pete Carroll acknowledged his want to be back on the sidelines for the 2025 season, as he had tweeted out earlier about a month ago regarding the Chicago Bears and other head coaching jobs. He tweeted out his want to be back on the sideline. And it looks like the Raiders decided to be that team that wanted to take a chance on him. And he is now 73 years old. So he will be the oldest head coach active in the NFL next season, beating out Andy Reid, who is 66. But nonetheless, I think it is a great hire. I absolutely love it. It is a defensive-minded coach that has obviously experience as not only a head coach for multiple years, but also experience in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, which I think is very important, even if the Raiders aren't Super Bowl contenders yet. I still think it is very important to have someone that has that experience there because they know what the locker room attitude should be, they know how the locker room should be, and they know how the players should react and train for an occasion like that. So I think Pete Carroll is a great, great addition. I think he'll really bring a stability and an identity to the team that has been lacking since John Gruden has been fired in 2021. And I think he'll bring that. He'll bring that experience, like I said. He'll bring the identity of that team of, all right, this is what we want our team to look like. This is what we want our team to play like. And then finally, I also think he will help straighten and almost fast track the Las Vegas Raiders rebuild. It seems like they've been stuck in this everlasting rebuild for the last few years, ever since they did get rid of John Gruden and Derek Carr and that wave kind of went out. It just seems like they've been in this everlasting rebuild. And I think Pete Carroll, the addition of him, bringing him into Las Vegas, I think will really help move that forward and move it along. So definitely one of my favorite hires. I still like the Mike Vrabel one that I brought up last week a little bit better, but I do like this hire and this chance that the Raiders decided to take on Pete Carroll. Moving on to the next team, the New York Jets, another team that has been through what feels like a very, very never-ending long rebuild. But nonetheless, Jets moved on from Robert Saleh in the earlier part of this year and decided to take their chance with the new head coach with Aaron Glenn. Some of you may know that name, some of you may not. If you don't, Aaron Glenn was the defensive coordinator the last 2 years for the Detroit Lions, the number 1 seeded Detroit Lions in the NFC, and the Jets decided to take a chance on him. I really love this hire as well. Defensive-minded, which I think really suits the Jets as well. The Jets have a lot of good defensive talent, but just sadly couldn't put it together this year. Injuries happened. They had first off, their coach got fired, which is a whole different message sent through the locker room. Very much, it shakes everyone's attitude. Everyone's morale is shaken, decreased, anything. It really just throws a whole team off. And then on top of that, they've had a lot of other things floating around between the Aaron Rodgers saga and the Devontae Adams coming in and all the trades, and then the pressure of winning a Super Bowl or making to the playoffs for the first time in years. All of that really just kind of screwed up the whole team. And I think bringing Aaron Glenn is a really good decision. I think his defensive mind will really help it really helped show all of the talent that the Jets possess on that side of the ball, all the young talent specifically. So I'm really excited for that. I also think it just gives a fresh start. Like I said, they had a lot of news, a lot of media around them because not only is it in New York, but then you also have Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson and all these different talents, Sauce Gardner. Everyone's out here. Everyone's star-studded. You have all these expectations, and then everything else just goes through, and you don't live up to them. Everything falls through. You end up having a 5-12 season. So I think having a new head coach, having a new fresh start, I think will really be good for the team, and I think it will help them. And honestly, I see this head coach, granted, I don't see them contending for the playoffs. I don't see them making the playoffs, but I do see them being better than their 5-12 record from this year. And I think Aaron Glenn will be a big part in that. And I think he'll really be able to help that defensive side of the ball flourish. And then I also think he'll help bring in offensive side of the person and really help make a connection between Aaron Rodgers and some of those other young weapons in that Jets locker room. But moving on to the next hire. I said Mike Vrabel was my favorite, and I still think it is one of my favorites, but I'm really, really starting to like this hire by the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears decided to hire Ben Johnson. Now, like I said, Aaron Glenn was the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. So the Lions are taking a huge hit coaching-wise. They are keeping Dan Campbell, obviously, but they are losing both of their coordinators, and they will be having to replace them this season. But Ben Johnson, like I said, the more I read up on this signing, the more I read up on the history of what the Bears are looking for and what Ben Johnson was looking for, I love this signing more and more. It might take place as my favorite over the Mike Vrabel, but so far it's still the Vrabel. I'm really interested to see how this goes. Now, Ben Johnson is an offensive-minded coach, very young, very young. And some of his wants, there were some wants that he wanted, there were some wants the Bears wanted, there were some wants and requirements that Caleb Williams had. And it seems like every single one they had matches. Caleb Williams wanted an offensive-minded coach, got it in Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson wanted a young franchise QB on a team. That's Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson got what he wanted. And the Bears obviously want to succeed and want to find an offensive identity, which they were lacking last year. And that's exactly what they got with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson led the number one offense in the NFL in the Detroit Lions last year. He's led them also the year before where they were a top 5 team in offense. And I think it is just a beautiful hire and a beautiful match made in heaven. It is going to be great. We're going to hopefully, in this first year, finally see a really good jump in Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense. I think the defense, which has been good the past few years, I think has been underrated. It will continue to do well, but I really think we'll see a massive jump in the offensive side of the ball. You have all these playmakers and DJ Moore and Caleb Williams obviously leading this all. You have DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, the rookie who's been really good, who was really underrated this year. You have all these people, Cole Kmet, and they just haven't really been able to put it together with the offense that they've had. I mean, we have Matt Eberflus. You're not really expecting a ton out of the offensive side of the ball. But now with Ben Johnson as the head coach and influencing that offensive coordinator, putting his fingerprints on that offensive touch, in the NFC North, by the way, he stayed in the conference as the Lions, same conference. I think we'll really see a jump in that Bears offense, and I think they can contend for a later seed wild card. Will it be easy? No. Will I be picking them? No. But I do think they can compete, and I would not be shocked at all if a year from now we go, wow, they actually had a really good productive season and made the wild card. But nonetheless, love the hire, loving it more and more every day. But moving on to the fourth team, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars moved on from Doug Peterson later this season. They had been with him, or Peterson had been with them for 2 years after the whole Urban Meyer fiasco. And so the Jaguars are looking for someone. They had a lot of injuries this year. It was not what they expected, almost a similar route to the Jets, kind of, whereas you had a head coach that was good, that you thought was going to bring a lot of, you thought that was they were going to be able to motivate them and bring this team to their first playoff in a little while. But sadly, injuries and news and media attention and everything else just kind of crumbled the whole team together, ended up getting rid of their coach. So the Jaguars fired Doug Peterson and decided to hire Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I did not know this name as familiar, or I was not as familiar with this name as I was with the previous head coaches I've talked about. But after doing a little research, I really do like this hire. I think it is a great hire for the Jaguars. It's going to be interesting just because it is an offensive coordinator. It's someone that doesn't really have much experience as a head coach. But I think he will be very good and very beneficial to this Jaguars team. Now, like I said, this Jaguars team dealt with a lot of injuries. Trevor Lawrence ended up getting injured the later half of the year, and they had a lot of talent around him. Christian Kirk ended up being on IR. Evan Ingram had gotten hurt for part of the season. Gabe Davis had gotten hurt for part of the season. They were missing a lot of pieces, but they had some bright spots too. Travis Etienne may have had an off year, but Tank Bigsby really kind of stood up and showed his talent at the running back position. You had the rookie, the phenomenal rookie who's going to his first Pro Bowl in his first season in Brian Thomas Jr. He's really was a bright spot this year. And so I think if you add in this offensive coordinator, this offensive mind, who led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense to being third, now this is according to Fox Sports, Liam Cohen had led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, who included Baker Mayfield, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, Jalen McMillan, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, and Chris Godwin. He led them to being the third overall offense in the NFL. And in my opinion, I believe the Jaguars supporting cast and their talent between the QB, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, that is like one step above what the Buccaneers had. They just have a little bit more natural talent, and they're definitely younger. So I think if Liam Cohen could find a way to make the Bucs the third overall offense in the NFL, I think it will be very interesting, and I think he'll do very well putting his fingerprints on that Jaguars offense with all their young key pieces. So it's going to be very fun. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch. I think it will definitely be different than their year this year where they went 5-12 and were absolutely awful in the season. Plus, I think they're going to have a little bit better injury luck. But again, they have a lot of playmakers that just either couldn't see the field because of injury or just were kind of hidden because of the team's lack of success. So with Liam Cohen going to Jacksonville, I think it'll be very fun. I think it'll be very interesting, and I can't wait to watch their games, specifically on offense, next year. Now, moving on to the last team. I've loved pretty much every hire I've looked at so far, at least really liked it, until last night when I was sitting there out with a few friends and looked at my phone and saw that the Dallas Cowboys had finally made a decision on their head coaching. And as I'm sitting there, I'm enjoying it, and I'm like, cool. Last week I talked about Deion Sanders, Steve Sarkisian, John Gruden possibly, even Pete Carroll. But little did I know that Jerry Jones had a different plan. Instead of deciding to hire outside of the franchise or outside of his own Cowboys team, he decided to promote the offensive coordinator named Brian, and I believe I'm pronouncing this right, Schottenheimer. Now, I have never seen this guy, never heard of this guy, yet Jerry Jones believes he can lead the Cowboys back to their glory, I'm assuming, or else he wouldn't have made the hire. I just don't quite see the vision. You had all these top candidates in coaching, you had all of this time, and you decide to stick with Schottenheimer. I don't quite understand it. It's not like he was doing great. Now, granted, they had some injuries. Dak Prescott was out. They had Cooper Rush in. But it's not like he was electric. It's not like he really put a touch on that offensive side of the ball. And on top of that, the offense wasn't really the position you needed to fix. Losing Dan Quinn last year, who was a big piece of that defense, I would have thought they may have gone to the defensive side of the ball, or at least gotten in a head coach that had more experience than just being an OC. So this Brian Schottenheimer experience, this Schottenheimer decision, I just don't quite follow. Now, granted, I'm not in the Cowboys meetings. I'm not in Jerry Jones's mind. So I have no idea what he's thinking. Maybe Schottenheimer is extremely good and I have no idea. But as far as a decision right now and as far as my reaction right now, I really don't like this hire. I just don't see the vision. I don't understand it. To me, this is another guy that in a year or two will be back out on the streets looking for another OC job, and Jerry Jones will be right back to where he was before. The only difference is that you most likely will be, all your stars will be older, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, and more likely than not, you'll probably not have as well of a roster because of all the money you're paying Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott. So I really just didn't agree with it at all. I just don't see it. But either way, that wraps up the 5 newest head coaches that have been hired this season. Those are the 5 teams. Like I said, I've loved the Raiders, Jets, Bears, and Jaguars decision. The Cowboys, obviously, it is what it is. Luckily, I'm not a fan. I do feel bad for some of my friends that are fans. But again, we'll have to see. Because again, we've never heard this guy. So we'll have to see how it rolls, how it goes out, how it unfolds. But moving on to more NFL, we have the NFC Championship and the AFC Championship taking place this Sunday, January 26th. The NFC game is at 3 p.m. on Sunday between the Eagles and the Commanders. So the Washington Commanders will be traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Both of these teams are extremely hot right now. They've been playing well. And this game is in Philly, like I said, so it does kind of sway the bars. To me personally, I still have the Eagles winning. Jaden Daniels has done great. He's technically 2-0 in his career in the playoffs. He is the only QB in this playoff series, this whole playoff bracket, to win an away game. And at that, he won 2 away games in these playoffs. But I just don't see his magic continuing. He had a great run to the championship. He will probably almost definitely win the Offensive Player of the Year or Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I just don't see his magic being able to take over the Eagles. The last time these two teams played, they did win. The Commanders did win. But it was in Washington. The Eagles were down Jalen Hurts because of concussions that he received or that he got earlier in that game. And on top of that, they were also, like I said, in Washington in a regular day. It was like middle of the day. I think it was like 4:25, 1 p.m., one of those earlier slates. And on top of that, it was semi-warm. In Philly this weekend at 3 p.m., it is not going to be warm. It's going to be 30 degrees, 20 degrees, and you're not going to have that home field advantage. That last game that the Commanders did win, it was 36-33 with a last-minute touchdown thrown, or last-second touchdown, thrown by Jaden Daniels. I just don't see them repeating. The Eagles are on fire. Saquon Barkley most likely will break the all-time rushing record for a season, including playoffs, not just season, but including playoffs as well. He's very close to getting 3,000 yards. If he plays 2 more games, he could legitimately come very close to getting 3,000 all-purpose yards. And in all fairness, talking about the defense, because this is going to be interesting, the Commanders are missing their starting center. He is out with an injury, suffered it last week against the Detroit Lions. But Jalen Carter, I mean, this is just ridiculous. The Eagles are pretty much stacked in every single position that you would look at on paper, defense and offensively, even special teams. The key to me will be Saquon Barkley because that Commanders defense is still not great. They won last week in a shootout with the Lions, 45-31. I don't think you can survive a shootout with the Eagles because their defense doesn't have a lot of injuries. Their defense is very dominant. And the most dominant person on that Eagles defense is Jalen Carter, who will change games. We saw it last week with the Rams' last drive. He just absolutely disrupted the entire momentum after the Puka Nacua catch. Jalen Carter goes, nope, you're not going to get this momentum. I'm going to sack Matthew Stafford completely, just tear up the entire motivation, the entire drive with that one play. He is a game wrecker who is very young, and I think he will wreck this game for the Commanders, especially the fact that the Commanders are missing their center. Nonetheless, I do think the Commanders will put up a fight. I think it's going to be about a 10-point game, 31-21. But with Saquon Barkley running it up the gut and running all over the field, and Jalen Carter disrupting anything that the Commanders will probably be doing, I don't see the Commanders coming out with a win and going to the Super Bowl. So I have the Eagles representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. But moving on to the game that is right after that one at 6:30 p.m., it is the AFC Championship, a little rematch from 2 years ago with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills. This game is in Arrowhead. It's in Kansas City. And I last week said, and you can go back and look at it, I said that whoever would win the Ravens-Bills game will go on to win the Super Bowl. Not just the championship, but the Super Bowl. And I will not back down on my word. I will agree with it. I do think the Bills will win. Josh Allen is playing probably the best football of his entire season right now. He's doing really well. The entire team's playing well. And the win last week against the Ravens in a close game in your home stadium. I think it's just going to boost everyone's morale and the whole team's motivation to then go out there and beat the Chiefs. Now, historically, the Chiefs have had the Bills number every time, but something just seems different about this Bills team. It's not really something you can find on a paper. It's not something you can statistically record. There's just some different feeling around this Bills team, and I do think that they will end up beating the Chiefs, finally getting over that hump and going to the Super Bowl. And then my Super Bowl will be the Bills versus the Eagles. Now, with all that being said, it is very tough to play in Arrowhead. It is extremely tough to play. They are recorded with the loudest decimal recorded ever in a stadium, in an NFL stadium. So it's going to be extremely tough for the Bills. But something about this team just screams that it's going to, or not screams, but just feels like they're just going to win. They're just going to find a way to win somehow, some way, riding Josh Allen, an MVP candidate. It's just going to be magical, almost, if you will. It's going to be like unthought of. The Chiefs being in there, being dominant, but Josh Allen and the Bills are just going to find some way to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead and win, go on to the Super Bowl, and face the Eagles for the Super Bowl championship, for the Super Bowl trophy. Moving from the gridiron to the hardwood, the NBA 2025 All-Star starters were announced earlier this week, and there really hasn't been much of a debate. A lot of people seem to be in agreement with who made it, who didn't, and I'm arguably in the same boat. I don't really see a lot of people that shouldn't be starting in either of these conferences. So beginning with the Eastern Conference, the starters at guard will be Donovan Mitchell in his 6th appearance as an All-Star, and Jalen Brunson as his 2nd appearance in an All-Star. The forwards will be Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jason Tatum. Jason, this is his 6th time, and Giannis, this is his 9th. And then the center will most likely be Karl Anthony Towns from the Knicks. It will be his 5th time. The reason why I say most likely is because Giannis also plays a little center, but I assume he's coming in as the forward, and Karl Anthony Towns will be the center for the Eastern Conference. Moving on to the Western Conference, the starters, a lot more of experience in here as far as All-Star game. You have Kevin Durant and you have LeBron James as your forwards. Kevin, this is his 15th All-Star game, and if you think that's long, just wait till you hear LeBron being in his 21st All-Star game. So a lot of experience in the forwards. The guards are Steph Curry in his 11th appearance and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in his 3rd appearance as an All-Star. And then wrapping up at center is Nikola Jokic. It is his 7th appearance as an All-Star. There really, like I said, not a lot of people, not a lot of fans that I've talked to, not a lot of my friends have really said that they disagree with any of these starters. The one that keeps coming up, if there's any debate, is Steph Curry. And as good as Steph Curry has been this year, and he definitely is an All-Star, a lot of people don't think he deserves, or not a lot, some people don't think he deserves this starter position over the likes of Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic. Statistically, specifically, that's where they really have the argument, is that Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic are just putting up statistically better seasons in pretty much every category. But I think what a lot of people don't really think about or remember is that the All-Star starters, or the All-Star voting in general, is all about the popular vote. It's about the fan vote. There are a lot of fans out there that vote for it. It is one of the things that they are allowed to vote for. And it does include some media, but it very much heavily depends on the fans themselves. And Steph Curry has a much, much, much bigger following than Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic. But the All-Star game will be Sunday, February 16th at 8 p.m. It will be hosted in the Warriors Stadium called Chase Center, and it will be there. It will be a fun matchup. It will be at least as fun as you can make an All-Star matchup. I believe the remaining All-Stars will be announced later on this week. And until then, they have basketball going all the way through. Then we'll have the All-Star break, and then it'll continue on to the finals. So a lot of fun things happening. I'm going to be trying to start finding a little bit more topics about the NBA, but this was one of the bigger breaking news headlines of the week. My last topic of the day is about the MLB, and more specifically, an 11-year-old card collector from Los Angeles. So back in the middle of November, the Pittsburgh Pirates sent out a widespread message all across social media on any single platform they could think of, sharing the fact that they would be offering a trade for one lucky person who would pull a one-of-one Paul Skeens autographed MLB debut patch card. Now, this card was of the Rookie of the Year in the NL. It is the pitcher, and it was an autograph that he had signed on this card, as well as the MLB debut patch that he wore during his first ever MLB game. Now, the Pirates wanted this so that they could share it and show it off kind of in their stadium for all Pirate fans to admire and all other fans to admire as well. So for this, they decided to offer up a very lucrative deal. Now, their offer for this one card, just the card, was the following. 2 Pirate season tickets behind home plate for the next 30 years, a softball game for 30 people at PNC Park that included coaching from Pirate veterans, so players that had played for the Pittsburgh Pirates in their organization's history, as well as a spring training experience, quote, like no other. This experience included a private tour of Pirate City and Lecom Park, a meet and greet with Paul Skeens himself, 2 Paul Skeens autographed jerseys, and the ability to take batting practice / warm-ups with the team, and other unique experiences, at least as quoted by the Pirates, at Pirate City and Lecom Park. Now, if you don't think this deal can get any more lucrative, Paul Skeens is dating a gymnast, a very famous collegiate gymnast in Livy Dunn, and she decided on Instagram to announce that she would up the stakes and add to it by offering the lucky winner to enjoy a Pirates game, just one game, with her in her suite. So all of this is up for grabs. All of this is available as long as the puller of the card, this one single card, trades it to the Pirates. Well, about 2 months went by, nothing was heard of. Until about a week ago, the news broke that an 11-year-old card collector had ended up pulling this card out of a pack. And the story is actually really cool. I'll just give you a little short, brief statement of it. The kid cited his day, pretty much like a journal entry essentially, of how the process worked up until he ended up pulling the card. He had gone through, his parents were looking to buy him a Christmas gift, and he said that he really wanted this card pack, but ended up the card pack got a little too expensive on the auction house, so they switched over to another box that included multiple different packs, and the kid decided the pack itself actually was for Christmas morning. So he knew he got the pack, but he was so excited to open it. Now, mind you, he does not know that the Paul Skeens card is in this. He's just excited to collect more baseball cards. Trust me, I've been there. I love collecting cards. Or I did love collecting cards when I was a kid, and just opening a pack was always so exciting and eventful. So he's just excited to open the pack. Flash forward to Christmas Day. The whole story was that he had gone through, he got to open his gifts first before his other siblings. So he opened 3 of the packs. He was excited, saw different cards, but there was no Paul Skeens. His siblings then opened up their gifts, came back to the kid. Now, mind you, I don't know his name. I'm just going to refer to him as the kid. The kid came back. He decided to open up his 4th pack. Still no card. Then opens up his 5th pack. And as he's filing through the cards, realizes he has the Paul Skeens 1-of-1 MLB debut patch autographed card. As he looks at this, he gets excited. He shows his dad. His dad is screaming, "Let's go," very excited, can't believe it. His brothers, his siblings are all running around as well, and his mom's even excited as well to this, and everyone's just thrilled. Breaking news, I think it was 3 weeks later, it was finally announced that the card was found, and now the kid has a decision. Do you keep the card? Do you sell the card? Or do you trade the card for this ultimate experience? Now, usually as a fan, you'd probably think, oh, you'd trade the card. It sounds like a great deal. The issue is that the kid is in Los Angeles. There's no mentioning of any flights. And what use would a 30-year full-blown season ticket offer and anything else do for a kid that is living across the country in Los Angeles? So instead of deciding to take the offer, which he declined, he decided, and his family decided, to post the card up for auction. Now, as of right now, there is no updates on whether the card has been bought, but it is up for auction for whoever wants to pay enough to buy it and either then decide to keep it, sell it, or trade it in. So as of now, the Pirates do not have the card. The kid is still selling it with his family. But knowing how much is at stake for this, I would not be shocked if a Pirates fan or any fan of a huge collector would end up paying thousands, if not even $1 million for this card. $1 million sounds crazy, but for the offer it is and for how crazy people get about collecting cards, which I completely respect, it could very well hit 7 digits. At bare minimum, I would be shocked if it doesn't reach 6 digits on this auction. But nonetheless, a very cool story, very exciting. And as this goes on, I will try to keep you guys updated as much as I can. But that was the little update for the MLB. And that there is the end of my episode of this episode of Brian Sports Hub. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in, for watching, if you stayed to the end here. This episode will be going out tomorrow as soon as I get this up. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I will catch you next time on Brian Sports Hub, your source for sports.